How's it going, everybody? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and in today's video I wanted to upgrade the new Jeskai Precon deck that is coming out for Tarkir Dragonstorm. I'm going to be doing an upgrade for each of these precons, mainly because I'm super excited for them. I actually pre-ordered all of them, and I thought I would do a little bit of an upgrade. And just to kind of give you an overview of how this upgrade will work, I'll talk about some of the new cards, the new commanders, and I'll talk about 10 cuts and 10 upgrades that you could throw into the deck. And I will be giving my reasons of why one card should be taken out in place of another card. And so now with that said, let's get it started. Let's upgrade this precon. So in this option, you have two different commanders to choose from: the Face Commander, Shiko and Narset Unified, or Elsha, Threefold Master. Let's discuss Shiko and Narset Unified first. It has Flying and Vigilance, and it has the new mechanic Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy that spell if it targets a permanent or player, and you may choose a new target for that copy. If you don't copy that spell this way, draw a card. So this is a pretty unique approach. You're focusing on targeting permanents or players, and you'll gain some kind of value of it copying that spell. And moving on to Elsha, it's a little bit more straightforward. It has Trample and Prowess, and whenever you deal combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 white monk creature tokens with Prowess. So the straightforward plan with this is casting a lot of non-creature spells, so that way Elsha gets huge, and then you get to make a huge army which also has Prowess, and then the next turn you swing in and you cast a lot of spells, that huge army is going to get buffed up along with Elsha. This could be a snowball into an avalanche kind of commander, and which seems pretty powerful too. And honestly, both of these commanders can be pretty suitable. I do like Shiko and Narset because it's a little bit more unique in the design aspect. Casting a second spell to copy it seems pretty powerful. And there are some pretty good new cards in this deck that I wanted to highlight. There are two new dragons, one named Voracious Bibliophile and the other Caldera Pyrmont. Both of these are very good with a Spellslinger theme. Voracious Bibliophile, whenever you cast a spell with one or more targets, draw that many cards. This seems absolutely broken. Any kind of target, whether you're targeting yourself with an extra turn, whether you're targeting to remove something on the battlefield, or even when you're counterspelling, because technically you have targeted something when counterspelling it. So the sky is the limit on drawing so much cards with this. And moving on to the other dragon of the deck, Caldera Pyrmont, is pretty fun. I honestly love this design. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then this creature deals damage equal to its power to target opponent. This seems like a game closer. The more spells you're casting, the more you're going to be dealing damage to your opponents. And this is really going to scale with the game for sure. So this is another fun one that I wanted to point out. Another dragon that is new in this deck that I'd like to focus on is Transcendent Dragon. It has Flash and Flying, and when this creature enters the battlefield, if you cast a counter target spell, if that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Then you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So this seems pretty good. 6 mana is a little steep, however it does have Flash, and of course it needs Flash to counter a spell, and this can be a great ETB option. You could just flicker this over and over again to counter a spell and get more value out of it. Another unique spell that they added into this list is Transforming Flourish, and I think this is going to be a great red card to come. It has Demonstrate and Destroy target artifact or creature you don't control. If that permanent is destroyed this way, its controller exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, then they may cast the card without paying its mana cost. So this is kind of similar to a Chaos Warp. You never know what they're going to put on the battlefield, but the fact that this does have Demonstrate, you could essentially cast this twice while your opponent casts it once. You're going to destroy 2 targets and they're going to destroy 1, so if there's a really pesky creature on the battlefield, I think it can potentially be a win-win for you. And the last new card I wanted to focus on is Will of the Jeskai. This is 4 mana for a sorcery spell. You can choose one, but if you control your commander, you choose both instead. Each player may discard their hand and draw 5 cards, and each instant and sorcery spell in your graveyard gains flashback until on a turn. The flashback cost is equal to the mana cost. So what's pretty good about this is, of course, if you have your commander out on the battlefield, you can have both. And a mini Will, and essentially like a Yawgmoth's Will, is pretty good. Flashback is technically not Yawgmoth's Will, I already know that, but in a way it's pretty similar because you're casting spells from the graveyard. So overall, this is pretty nice. I like what it's doing, but now I wanted to shift my focus and talk about 10 cards that you should cut and 10 cards that you should put in. Also, as a disclaimer, I'm not going to really touch the land base. I feel like that is kind of personal to whoever wants to upgrade the land base in what sort of way. If they want to add fetch lands, shock lands, and all that stuff, more the merrier. I'm not going to touch that specifically. I am going to focus more on cards that you should put in the deck. So the first card I would cut is Shiny Impetus. This is kind of a card that usually goes into a lot of Commander Precon decks. decks because it has the goad mechanic, and it can be good because it could gain you treasure tokens and a creature is going to be redirected at somebody else, but personally, I'd rather get more value out of casting instant and sorcery spells. I would definitely trade it for Cryptic Command. This is a great instant spell that you could utilize because it has multiple targets. You could choose to counter target spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand, tap all creatures your opponents control, and draw a card. If you already cast one spell with Narset on the battlefield, and then you cast this one, you can target a permanent, put it into their owner's hand, and copy this spell and get additional value. Another card that's mysteriously in here, and I feel like it would be better suited in the Abzan Precon, is Ghostly Prison. This is essentially a stacks piece where people can't really attack you unless they pay into that tax. I don't think that's necessary, especially with the huge amount of creatures we're making. And speaking of making more creatures, let's add in Shark Typhoon. This is excellent because we're casting a lot of instant and sorceries and really just non-creature spells. And what's better than putting flying sharks onto the battlefield that we could swing in with? This would be definitely better to help us protect our board. And if we want to go into the more aggressive route, we have that option too. And again, I know I'm really picking on the enchantments, but I just have one more. Curse of Opulence. Obviously, it's focusing on making people attack other people. When you enchant a player, you're cursing them, and you are getting gold out of the options, and I feel like that's okay, but again, I would rather focus on the instant and sorcery spells that target, so that way we get more benefits out of Shiko and Narset, and even Elshib too. That's why I think Mystic Confluence is another great card, very similar to Cryptic Command. However, you could choose 3 modes, and you could choose one more than once. You could counter a spell unless they pay 3 mana, you can return target creature card to its owner's hand, and draw a card. So again, since we are targeting with return target creature to its owner's hand, we can double up on that with Narset and get a second copy of the spell. And another card that's probably meant more for precons and is pretty low powered, even though it is pretty efficient. Think twice, draw a card, and it has flashback, pay 2 and a blue, is not necessarily what we're looking for. You're only drawing a card out of this, you're not really getting that much benefit out of it. This deck probably could use a little bit more counter spells. Something like Dovin's Veto is going to be an excellent choice because the spell can't be countered and you counter target non-creature spell, all just for 2 mana. And since you are in the color combination, this is going to be a win-win for you. I'd much rather have a counter spell over something that'll just draw me 1 card and flashback for another card. And for 5 mana for drawing 2 cards, that's not really what we're looking for. Something like Dovin's Veto is going to help us protect our commander and even may stop somebody from winning the game. Another card I don't think really fits in this deck is Baral and Kari Zev. I mean, it is pretty decent because you're in an instant and sorcery theme. You can cast an additional spell, but most likely you have a bigger spell you want to be casting, not something that has lesser mana value. I don't think it's quite necessary, especially for the cost. I'd rather have something that reduces all our instant and sorcery spells. I would much rather have something in the deck like Stormcatch Mentor or even Thunderclap Drake. This is probably the better one of the options because, of course, it reduces instant and sorcery spells you cast by 1, but not only that, you can sacrifice it by paying into that activated ability. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it for each time you cast your commander from the command zone this game. So if you already cast your commander once, you get a copy of spell once, but if more times you get to cast your commander, the more you're going to copy a spell. It's going to be a great value engine for you. Also, going back to Stormcatch Mentor, I do believe it's going to be a pretty powerful card in the deck. I would replace it probably with something like Electro-Dominance. It is pretty decent, but since we already have a card like that with Expansion Explosion, I don't think it's quite necessary to have that in the deck because you want to get the most value out of it. I'd much rather reduce the spells I cast in a general sense. And another card I would actually replace in the deck, it could be a little controversial because a lot of people like this card, but Lier, Disciple of the Drowned is something we don't necessarily want in the deck because spells can't be countered. That does include your opponent's spells, so it's almost like a world effect. And plus, we do have some counter spells in this deck. I don't believe it's going to be good enough, even though we do have instant and sorcery spells in our graveyard have flashback equal to their mana cost. That is pretty powerful, but again, it's too risky. Having spells can't be countered. I would replace that with another different kind of card. And yeah, would you look at that? It's another cost reducer. I can't get enough of these cost reducers, especially in an instant sorcery spell deck. Archmage of Runes is incredible. Not only will it reduce your instant or sorcery spells by 1, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. This will help refill our hand, kind of like Archmage of Emeritus, so we don't really run out of steam when we're casting more and more instant spells and sorcery spells too. And in this type of deck, I believe we have so much card draw, we don't necessarily need a card like Mangara the Diplomat. This is generally just good stuff. I would consider it if it said whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card, but it's whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. I don't think that's quite as good, and I don't think it's necessary in this deck, especially for the mana cost. And I know with this next card, you're going to be like, hey, you talked about mana cost, but then you added in this card. But for me, I love this card so much, and I feel like it could be a great fit. Right of the Dragon Collar is incredible. Again, it is at a hefty mana cost of 6, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. We're really going wide with a lot of different creatures on the battlefield, especially in this type type of deck, of course, and with dragons too. This is just a perfect fit, mainly for the theme of Tarkir. Each time you're casting like an Opt or a Ponder, you're making a 5/5 red dragon creature on the battlefield as well. This could really close out games fast too, and that's why I wanted to highlight it, even though it's more of a Timmy card. I did want to move on to the next card in this deck, and it's actually a new card, and I don't believe it necessarily fits in this type of strategy, and that's Tempest Technique. For 4 mana, it does have Storm, and enchant creature you control. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Obviously, this stacks on itself whenever you storm with it. If you stormed out with like 4 different copies, each creature enchanted with this is going to get +4/+4 on top of the other enchantments that you already have. Again, I don't necessarily find it super fitting because we're not really an Enchantress type of deck. This can be really good in like a Sithis deck, but not necessarily in this one. A good option that could really burn the table down is Fiery Inscription. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. That's not really what we're worried about mostly, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Fiery Inscription deals 2 damage to each opponent. That's what we're really after. With the amount of little instant and sorcery spells, or the big ones, we can increase the damage input more and more. Also basically acting as another Gutter Snipe on the battlefield. Imagine having this and Gutter Snipe both together, dealing 4 damage whenever you're casting an instant or sorcery spell. You're really going to be burning the table down for sure. And the last card I would actually take out of this list, even though it is a cost reducer, I'm replacing it with a better cost reducer. Goblin Electromancer can be pretty good, but I would prefer something like Hinata Dawncrown. This is absolutely crazy in this list. It's going to be a cost reducer on steroids. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast each target, and spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. So this is really good, especially if you have a spell that has more than 1 target. It's going to be reduced by that much more. Not only that, it's a little bit of a stacks piece against your opponents, making them pay additionally when they target other type of cards or players. When I saw this type of strategy, you could honestly have Hinata as the commander itself, but I think it would be better suited than 99, just reducing the spells you cast while making it cost more for your opponents to cast. So overall, this is a win-win. So now that I've talked about 10 cards that you should take out and 10 cards that you should put in, that is going to do it for me, guys. I appreciate you all for watching this video. If you are looking for any of the singles that I talked about today to upgrade the deck, make sure to check out my TCG player affiliate link down below in the description. All you have to do is click on it, get the cards you want, and that's really it. Besides that point, what other cards would you recommend adding into this list? I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.